Hey y'all, and if you're new here, welcome to the family. My name is Asia.
My name is Jared, and thank you for listening to
Done with Adulting Podcast. We are really glad you're here because we're talking all things we have to do as adults that no one warned us about during the many years we were in school.
Yes, we also discuss pop culture, current events, and give our perspective on hot topic issues in our society. And even though we're best friends, we don't always agree.
Basically, we're millennials. We get it. Adulting is hard. Welcome to your safe space.
We hope you enjoy.
Hello, fam. This is Asia, of course. And welcome back to another episode of Done with Adulting Podcast. Today is a special sort of re-release. We haven't released this before, but this is an interview that I did with our good friend Brenna from Real Fucking Talk Podcast. And her podcast is all about mental health. She's a mental health therapist, and she invited both Jared and I on to do separate interviews about just like things we struggle with related to mental health. And we posted Jared's a few months ago, so you may have heard that. And we never released mine, which I'm glad we didn't because now feels like the perfect time. But in this interview, we are basically just going in real detail, like probably the most detail I've ever had, on just what I struggle with related to grief and the loss of my dad and how it shows up in my life and my relationships with other people. So that is what you are about to hear. I wanted to give you a quick little solo intro before we get right into the weeds of my life. And I think the other thing I want to say too, which is why I'm glad we waited to release it till now, is because it is obviously the holiday season. Life is crazy, and I think a lot of us do struggle with just grief around the holiday season, whether it's not getting to see people that you want to see, or maybe you've gone through a recent loss and this would be the time that you see that person. So no matter how old your shit is, it never goes away, and it always seems to especially come up during the holidays. So I wanted to release this. One other disclaimer is that when this episode was recorded, I was not in therapy yet. It was recorded quite some time ago. So now I am in therapy, obviously, as you guys know. Things are going well. We're doing grief work and all that good stuff. So I'm happy to give you guys an update on how that is going. But just know that this was recorded long before that. So if you hear any references about how I need to get into therapy and all those things, that is why. But other than that, we think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So let me know. Be sure to leave a review wherever you're listening to this. It is so helpful. Tell a friend about the podcast. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Done with Adulting Pod. And on Twitter, of course, at DoneWTH Adulting. We hope you enjoy.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Real Fucking Talk. My favorite episodes are the ones I do with my friends. And today you guys are going to hear from a friend I made this year, Asia Watson. Asia is a social worker and one of the hosts of the Done with Adulting podcast. You guys heard from her co-host, Jared, a few weeks ago on the pod. And today you will hear from her. Thank you, Asia, for coming on.
I am so excited.
I'm so excited.
I'm just like, I'm so excited.
So guys, Asia just came back yesterday from this week-long family vacation, but her family vacation is not the typical family vacation you're thinking of. Like literally 20 out of 24 hours each day. It was like drinking, partying, like with every member of her family. She has like 19 million members of her family.
Precisely 19 million. Exactly.
You like need a vacation from your vacation.
Yes, I need a vacation for my vacation. Not only that, it's like I almost like I need The mistake is when you go on vacation, you should take off like another extra day or two after you get back from work to get your life together. Because even though I came back on the weekend, like I actually came back on Saturday, so I had like a day in, before I had to go back to work, but like I needed at least 2 more days because it's just like you have so many things to do at home that you haven't done. You got to do all this laundry and cleaning and all that other shit you were talking about today, Brenna. Like it's just so much. Like I need extra days on my vacation, but it was so much fun.
I co-signed that message because Asia and I were just talking before we started recording, and I told her I spent the weekend catching up on like work, like paperwork for my job. So today is Monday and I have off on Mondays. So I deep cleaned my apartment. I did the laundry, and now it is 5 o'clock and I sat down for the first time today and I was like, fuck, I'm so tired. I don't want to record a podcast. I don't want to do shit.
Yeah, no, I feel you 1000%. It's wild. And now we're just like perpetually waiting for our next day off. That's how I feel. That's what my podcast is about.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Well, okay. I was going to ask you about your podcast at the end, but can you please tell people what Done with Adulting is about?
Yeah. So Done with Adulting literally was birthed out of just like general frustration of the exact thing we're talking about right now. And yeah, we talk about all different types of things. We have like a lot of self-help topics where we talk about like taxes and home buying and all that shit we're expected to know that no one taught us when we were in school. So
Right.
we talk a lot about that. We also talk about like current events, a lot of like a little bit of political in terms of just like speaking up for causes that we believe in. Everything obviously from the Black perspective, which I feel like makes it super unique.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just a good time. And Jared and I, my co-host, have been friends for like more than 10 years. So it's just a really fun dynamic and just a fun thing to do. You're a fellow podcaster. So we love it.
I love that. And I love your pod. But I had introduced you as a social worker, and you are not a social worker in the typical sense. So please explain what the fuck you do.
Yeah. So I am a social worker by trade. Like I have a master's in social work, a license that I'm barely maintaining, but it's just like my fallback plan. But I work in nonprofit. I actually do fundraising, and most people like don't really even think of this like field as like a career because a lot of people who are in fundraising like stumble into it, which is exactly what happened to me. But so I essentially am in charge of raising millions of dollars to help support an after school program that is based in entrepreneurship and STEAM programming. So yeah, that's my job. I raise money.
That's
Basically.
amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. It's interesting because again, I stumbled into it and most people that I know in the field like had no intentions on becoming a fundraiser, and it's not the easiest job in the world, right? It's kind of like sales but worse because you're just like the person gets nothing back in return aside from like feeling good. So there's a lot of like I still use a lot of social work skills as it relates to like relationship building and all that good stuff. So it's fun. I stumbled into it, but it's a twist on like nonprofit work, because I feel like people think of social work and they think like direct service or like direct practice, but there's
Right.
a lot of different like ways that you can branch off like from the social work field. So it's
Totally.
cool.
And
Yeah.
I like think that the skills that we learn in grad schools for anyone who works in the helping professions is just so useful in everyday life.
Yeah, like so transferable. I swear, like the reason I'm good at my job is because of what I learned in school for social work. And it's funny because when you came on my podcast and you asked why I don't go to therapy, I was like, well, sometimes I just like social work myself. So it's like a blessing and a curse because I will social work myself to the point where it's like, I know what I'm supposed to do, quote unquote, or like should do or and stuff like that. And like I have good awareness of what I would tell clients when I was seeing clients.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Am I frozen?
No. Am I frozen for
Okay,
you?
sorry. You were for a second, but not anymore. It's okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. No,
I
you're
thought
good.
I was frozen. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually happy you brought up therapy, and I do want to tie that into what we're talking about today. And this is what I wanted to talk to Jared about, but we got totally sidetracked. Like, I said one thing about like being a Black American, and all of a sudden for the next hour, we were fucking talking about that. Like, we could not stop. And that's
I
not
love
on
that.
Jared. Like,
I love that.
I went hard too. So like that was a great episode, but I would love to talk to you about grief. So
Yes.
we all have different experiences with grief, and I have obviously heard your story on the Dying of Laughter podcast, but I'd love for you to share your experience with grief with my listeners.
Yeah. It's so funny because obviously like my biggest experience with with grief.
My biggest experience
Oh,
with grief.
like vacation. Yeah. My biggest experience with grief is the loss of my dad, which happened almost 10 years ago now. But like, my family is so big, and I always like use this as I guess like reasoning in my head. Like that's why we have so much loss, is like it's logical. The more people you have in your family that you're close to, the more loss you're going to experience. So my family is so big, and we have experienced a lot of loss in general. Like aside from losing my dad, like at our age, like who has grandparents? Well, my husband actually has 3 grandparents, which is wild. But
What?
yes, I know. I tell him that all the time. I'm like, hashtag bless. So like obviously the loss of grandparents, I've unfortunately like lost cousins who are close to me in my age. So there's just like a lot. But for me, like my biggest thing, like I said, is with my dad. And that was such like a wild experience because I was only 19 years old. So yeah, it was like in the moment, like especially at the age of 19, and my dad was sick. So like there was a 4-year period of time where he was sick, like before he passed away. But I I'm sure at this point, retrospect, like I wasn't being told like all the details because I was like in college, I was playing basketball, I was 19, like or 18
Right.
when he was sick. Actually, when he first got sick, I was 16. So they weren't giving me all the ins and outs of what was going on. And so when my dad ended up passing away, it was like it would just never cross my mind that that would happen, despite like the fact that he needed organ transplants, and like I knew all these things. But just the way it was presented to me, like in the way he was as a person, was like very cash, like, and it's like so funny to think about now, like describing it as casual, because like he at the end of his life, the last 2 years, used an oxygen tank that he had to like bring with him everywhere he went because his disease was a lung disease. So he would just like roll this oxygen tank around and like into my games, and like when he was coming to see me play basketball. Now they think about it, I'm like, any like idiot would think like this is not normal, like this must be
Right.
serious. But it never, like I was just like, oh, this is just a thing, like until we get the transplant, which was, it was like never talked about not getting the transplant, So
Wow.
I know I'm kind of like jumping all over the place, but this fact of the matter is my dad had a lung disease that's like a chronic lung disease that a lot of people have and don't die from. Like a very small percentage of people die from it.
Wow.
And when you do pass away from it, it's because it like spreads to other organs, not your lungs. So like for him, it was his heart and then eventually his brain. So that was another reason why I was like, this is not going to happen, because actually other people in my family have the same disease and they're just living their lives. So
Mm-hmm.
anyways, fast forward, like we dealt with that for end of my high school going into college. And then when I was a sophomore in college, unfortunately he passed away. And it's just so weird now, like going on almost 10 years later, because we are obviously so different now as like pushing 30 and not anything like it's almost like the grief that I deal with now. It was like the first 3 years was a shit show.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a 4-year period where I was just like mid 20s, ignoring all my emotions, just like living my life partying.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like late 20s and like we're not partying as much, but you know what I mean? And it's like, so we're forced to like sit and do all these adulting things. And so it's like like major events happening in your life. Like I just got married and all that stuff. And so it's like, you wonder like, what would this person say about that? Or like, what advice would this person give me? So it's just so weird because even coming on 10 years when I thought like I would not be dealing with it this frequently, I guess is the right way to say it, or like severely, is it I am, because of all, like I said, all these major life events and changes and things, and like just not even knowing. Another thing too is like my mom and I have a super close relationship, and it's so different now than it was when I was 19. Like
Mm.
I've learned so many things about her that I never knew before, just off the fact that like I'm an adult now and she tells me more adult things. And so those are the things that I'm always like, I wonder like how our relationship would be, or like how much more I would know. And I learn new things about my dad every day. Like this man knew so many people. I can't even tell you. He knew so many people. It's like any person that I know or talk to that knew him like tells me some random story that I've never heard before. So like that's always really nice. But even those moments make you think like, damn, like I wish I could just like call and like ask about that hilarious story, you know? So
Yeah.
it's such a weird, very, very weird thing. And um I think too, especially when you've dealt with more than one loss, um, it's like I might have be having a good day, like not missing or like thinking of or being emotional about my dad, but it might be like someone else. You know what I mean? It's just like, what the frick? Like, when is this? You know, and when does it end? And it doesn't end, I guess, is the
Totally.
moral.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't
so
end.
yeah,
I think what you said before is something that so many people can really relate to right now. What you said was like, I didn't think that this would ever happen to me. And I think that that's something that we're really seeing a lot, especially with COVID, where it's like, oh, yeah, other people get sick, but like the people who die from it won't be people I know. It won't
right.
be my loved one. And then it's like, oh shit, it actually is. I
I
actually
know.
do know someone who passed away from this or whatever. So I think that that's such a relatable thought. Like,
Yeah.
oh, well, yeah, they're sick, but they're going to get better because in your mind, they have to. Because
Yeah.
life without your dad life can't go on without your dad.
Right. But it has for 9 years, which is like another very weird thing to like think about. Like, I don't know. I don't even, obviously, your podcast is like, we're explicit here. So even when I'm like, in my room, just like getting a little high or like having a glass of wine or whatever it is that I'm doing to let off steam, that's probably not healthy, other than going to therapy. I'm always just like, I get into the modes where I just start spiraling in my mind about like, how the hell has it almost been 10 years? Like, what have I been doing? Because at this point, approaching 10 years in February, it will be, I feel like emotionally dealing with it, I'm reverting backwards.
Mm.
And so I'm just like, what is going on? Like, it's just wild. Again, probs need therapy.
I'm actually really happy that you brought that up, that like when you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing or like things that are private, that you like think about that, because I often, and my fucking uncle listens to this podcast religiously, and I know I'm going to regret this, but like when I'm having sex or like whatever, I will be like, I think the people that like died who loved me, like they could probably see this. Like, is that
Okay.
normal to think?
You are not the only person who thinks that. And if anybody tells you you are, they're lying, because yes, I think that's normal. But I also choose to believe that, like, here's another thing. As you know, I've been like doing, as you know, maybe not the listeners, but Brenna, I've been doing like more down my spiritual journey path.
Uh-huh.
Slow, very slow journey, but it's happening. And so now I'm kind of at this place where I choose to believe like the people who have passed away like are still with us literally all the time. So in theory, what you just said would be true. However, I also choose to believe that those people still have their common decency and like don't want to see me doing that and aren't there when that's happening.
Still have their common decency. My Nana's probably in the corner, like, yeah, girl, get it.
My Nana.
My Nana. Oh my God. That is so fucking funny. There are so many times that like it's just a thought in my head when I'm doing something. And I'm like,
Quickly.
yeah, I'm like, is my boyfriend's dad here? Like, is he my father-in-law?
Stop.
I can't. But okay, getting back to fucking grief.
Yes.
Okay, not fucking. I want to know, how does your grief today look different than your grief then? And you kind of just went on that timeline of like, for the first 3 years, you were like super sad and angry and all of that.
Yeah, I think like, so to clarify, like when my dad passed away, I was a sophomore in college and I played collegiate basketball. My dad also played collegiate basketball. That was like our thing. I was the only one of his kids who played. So like that was our thing. So I had to go then play 2 more years of basketball without the person who literally has sat behind the bench every single game of my entire life.
Right.
So in season and leading up to season and all those things for the last 2 years was very fucking hard. And but at the same time, like there was so much going on. Like I in the games and in practice and like in season, I could like block some stuff out. And then it was like in the off season that I would literally just crumble. So yeah, that time looked a lot more like a lot more frequent tears, like a lot of anger, like a lot of lashing out, a lot of like self not harm, but just like I was in a relationship that was horrendous and like didn't really feel like I deserved anything better, or like rather couldn't date someone who didn't know my dad. So like I was just suffering through that and just like putting myself through that for no reason. So it was like a lot. And then so after the first 2 years, I moved to DC and to go get my master's. And that was like distraction phase, like partying, like crazy. I went to like a predominantly white college in Massachusetts where I literally, there was like 5 Black people. Jared was one of them. And then for my master's, I went to Howard. So I was literally like
very different.
Lit. I was living my best life. I was still grieving, but like I was so distracted by just like DC as a city is like you probably wouldn't have known that I had recently gone through a loss. I also met my husband at that time, so I was like falling in love and all these things. So it was just whatever, different. And now I think like I'll say the past 3 years, which 3 years ago I moved back into my childhood home with my mom and my husband, obviously, while we were saving for a house. So like lots of memories here, lots of like that type of triggering thing, which I was to be expected. But I think now, like for me, I'm not as like if I feel like I'm gonna get emotional, I can like hold it back and then like cry it out in the shower. Whereas like in the first 3 years, if it was coming, like it was coming, like there was no stopping it. You know what I mean? And now I'm like, oh, like I'm feeling like sad or like whatever, like this thing. And if I need to cry it out, like I said, shower for me is like very cathartic. I'm like water sign. So anything in the water for me is like amazing. And also like I just think that even spiritually and the spiritual journey I'm on has helped because I've always been, you know this, I've always been a lucid dreamer. So when my dad first passed away and I was lucid dreaming, I was like petrified. Like I would wake up sweating, like emotional, like throw myself out of sleep because I was either scared or like trying to speak or whatever. And now it's more like, oh, I hope my dad comes to my dream. Like, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit different and definitely more mature in the way that I process my feelings, but they're all still there. It's just more of like managing, like, okay, like I don't need to bust out in tears right now, but when I get home tonight and get in the shower, like it's over. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's like the main difference for me. And yeah, it can be challenging too, though, just because I'm not like a big talker about feelings, which is probably why I haven't gone to therapy. So I never like really say these things like I'm saying them to you, but like I would not like sit down with my husband and be like, I'm about to like, sometimes I'll be like, I need to watch Grey's Anatomy because I need to just cry it out. And like, that's our signal of just like me having an emotional day is like, I need to put on something that's going to make me sob uncontrollably. But other than that, like we don't in depth talk about feelings related to my grief specifically.
What do you think it would be like to do that?
I think, I don't really know. I think like I'm apprehensive to do it because I don't think that he can really relate. So even just like not even from a death of a parent standpoint, just from like death in general, like literally, I I mean, I don't know. Since we've been together in 7 years, he has not lost anybody. I've lost like 4 people in that time since we've been together. So like my grandmother, my cousin, all these people. So he's witnessed me like in that first initial shock phase and like those first couple phases of grief on more than one occasion. And I've never witnessed it for him. So sometimes I just feel like he wouldn't really get it. And like part of that I think is true just because until you've really lost somebody important to you, like if I were to sit here and say like, oh, I'm sad about my dad, like who died 10 years ago and you've never lost anybody, you'd be like, that was 10 years ago. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know what it would be like, but I do think it would just be it would be a challenge for me because not that he's not a good listener, but I'm not a great, like I can articulate myself in almost like every other setting except talking about this subject basically. But with you, it's like you're my friend. It's like this is I knew I was prepared to like come and like talk about deep stuff today. And with him, it's like maybe I don't know. It's like even a more vulnerable situation, but also like he's just a generally very happy individual. Like that's our joke is like he like wakes up and I'm like like we'll wake up in the morning and the birds are chirping and I'm like, shut that fucking window, these birds are too loud. And he's like, the birds are awake, so I'm awake, it's a beautiful day. Like that is the difference in our personality too. So sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be the downer, so there's like a little bit of that. But yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. Like it's something I know we're gonna have to tackle at some point because eventually he will unfortunately lose somebody that he loves. And I feel totally prepared for it because I've been going through it. But yeah, I just I don't think he really knows like what the right thing to say is, which who does? There really isn't anything you can say. So it's a little bit of a challenge, I would say, in that sense. But
yeah, I do think though that so often, admitting that and being like, yeah, I don't like talk to my husband about this. Like there's almost like a weird stigma on like, oh, you feel like you can't talk to your husband about it, where it really doesn't matter who you're speaking about it with, as long as you're speaking about it to someone or getting it out in some form. And, I'm sure that there are other people on this planet who can better relate to what you're going through. And you might feel more comfortable talking to them about it. And that doesn't mean your marriage sucks. It just means that how lucky are you to have a friend who can relate and who can really support you in that sense.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because it does feel like that sometimes. It feels like, is this like a problem or is this weird that like we don't talk about this? But the way you just put it made me feel a lot better because I think you're right. Like there are people who I know in my life who have lost parents that I can talk to you about it when I need to, or even just like that knew my dad, right? Like he didn't even know him.
Right.
So it's like, what am I explaining to you? Like now I have to explain to you all this backstory and all, whereas like I could just call my cousin who it was her uncle and you know what I mean? And it's like, that is enough for me. Like I don't really need that from him right now in this phase of my life.
Right.
So yeah, but you do kind of feel like it does kind of make you feel like, oh, does that mean we're like, we don't have good communication or something weird?
It's so funny because I feel like I am your husband in this scenario and you are my boyfriend, Pat, where like he's lost multiple friends. He's lost multiple family members. He lost his dad. Like I have lost grandparents, but like, it, as like weird as this is to say, like you expect your grandparents are going to die. Like
Right.
that was supposed to happen. I was
Mhm.
supposed to lose my grandparents. And I imagine that like, you know, we talk about his dad sometimes, like on 9/11, we'll maybe like say something or like, you know,
Wow, I didn't
something will,
know that part of your story. His dad passed away from 9/11
yeah, his dad and his uncle worked together and they passed away on 9/11. They worked in the towers.
in the towers. Stop.
Yeah.
That's insane, Brenna. I'm so sorry to hear that. That is wild, though.
I know he was 11 and his like
That's
he
how
had
old my brother was when my dad
wow.
passed away.
Wow.
It's such a weird age, too, for him. And like, oh, maybe this will give you some perspective. What's your boyfriend's name again?
Pat.
Pat. For Pat is like what I've noticed with my brother is, and he's only 22 now, so he still has a lot of adulting to do. But from 11, like from that moment, 11, 12 years old, like his entire high school and teenage experience was really, really hard. And even to this
Mm-hmm.
day, like he struggles with certain things that we don't say, like, we don't talk about, like, oh, this is all me in my head theorizing, social working, my brother being like,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're acting like this because you never had this taught or like whatever. And it's, oh my gosh, that age is such a weird time to lose somebody
Yep.
because you have memories, like you have a significant amount of memories, but you also like don't, like you only have 11 years worth and you probably don't remember the first 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just so weird. And with my brother, we definitely saw like a shift in him where like the first 5 years he didn't say shit about it. Like he never talked about my dad, like wouldn't even bring it up. And then like later in high school, he started to like ask more questions and like reminisce and like tell stories and be like, oh, remember when this happened? Or remember when this happened? And the grieving process for him has just been so different than mine.
Right.
Um, so that's wild. That is sad though. Oh my gosh.
I know. I know it is really sad, but he's also lost like we have also been together for 7 years, but we went to high school together. When he was a senior, I was a freshman, but like his senior year, he lost his best friend. And then like a couple of years later, he lost another friend and then another friend. Within the
Wow.
time we've been together, he's lost like 1 or 2 friends. So it's just he's very much in your shoes where he's like
Mm.
death is a part of life and death happens and I get it. And I am the one that's like, I've never lost a friend. I've never lost a parent. So like, and you know, I'm a therapist. Like I'm fucking great to talk to about this. But at the end of the day, I don't have that experience. And I don't, you know, I understand that I don't understand. And I think that that is so important. You know,
Mm.
I hate the people who are like, oh my God, I totally get it. Where it's like, you fucking don't. So shut up. Okay.
Right.
You
No,
don't get it.
1000%.
Yeah. But yeah. And I more so am like your husband. So it's just,
Yeah.
but I imagine that Pat, like when he does want to, because Pat is also very much like Jared, where Pat like will say one thing, he'll be like, nice. Yeah, cool. I'm like, I will honestly, and you know me, I can't shut the fuck up. So like, what? Like, why? Why can't you just like entertain me? Like,
Oh
come
my
on.
God.
But I imagine that like when he does want to talk about his dad or his friends, like he probably turns to his friends who knew those people or family members who knew those people. And that doesn't mean anything in our relationship is wrong. It just means that he feels more comfortable doing that. And that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And I think there's so many other ways for spouses to be supportive, like that
Mm,
have nothing to do with talking. Like what you're saying, like if it's the 9/11 anniversary or like on my dad's death anniversary, we like my husband knows when it is. We literally don't say, like, unless I say something like, oh, I can't believe it's been this many years, it doesn't come up. But he's definitely more extra attentive, or like, do you want to go out to dinner, or do you want to go do
mm,
this? And just like he's aware. And I know that if I needed to like say something or talk about it or whatever, like flip through old photo albums, he would do that. But for him, it's like, I'm not going to do that unless and he has said this, he's like, I'm not gonna like do anything you don't, or like unless you ask me to do it, like you have to communicate that. So
Yeah.
really for him, it's like, let me just be physically present and available for like any moment in time when like the day comes that you do want to talk about it, but it just hasn't really come yet. But like I appreciate, like I know he does that because he knows it's the death anniversary. You know what I mean? And it's like we don't
Right.
have to talk about it. Literally, no words are said about it. But like, oh, do you want to like watch a movie or do you want to do this? Like something that we would normally do just to have fun, but like just being intentional about doing it on that specific day or my dad's birthday or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's other ways for
That's
spouses to
so
support
important
it.
because you're right. There is no right way or one way to support someone on their grieving journey and grieving process. And my rule of thumb is just ask the person, like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I know that this day is really hard for you going forward, especially if it's like a spouse or a best friend, someone who's going to be in your life forever. Like, hey, what do you need on this day? What would make
Yep.
you feel most comfortable? And if they say, I want to be alone, do not bother me, it doesn't mean you're not supporting them. It actually means if you leave them alone on that day, that you are doing what makes them feel most comfortable. But so
Yeah.
many people can want to go above and beyond and want to, you know, do it verbally. And I think that that's so nice that your relationship is so strong that he's like, hey, she knows if she wants to talk, I'm here. She knows.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, it's just funny. Like Terrence is like I said, super positive all the time. Like just very Leo energy. Think of your classic Leo, like this is him. And so yeah, like I think sometimes that's actually helpful to me. Like sometimes it annoys me, like first thing in the morning, I'm like, please, sir. But sometimes I'm like secretly grateful for it because I'm like, okay, how can I be like grumpy when this man is like foolishly like dancing around? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
stuff like that just like he probably doesn't know is helpful, but it's just a part of his personality. Like he's not even doing it on purpose. He's just being himself. That can really change a mood around. Let me tell you.
Oh my God. I love
I
that.
know it's so funny.
My I my rule of thumb is like if you don't know how to help someone or you want to be there for them, but you don't want to make a big deal of it, just like drop off some food or something, order food. But my favorite story is that around 9/11, like obviously my boyfriend's family lost, his mom lost her husband and her brother. So like this was a loss is a tremendous loss on its own, but like this was multiple people at once.
Right.
So my boyfriend's brother is my age. So we were 8 at the time. And there's a story of like Mike, his brother, sitting on the stoop and someone was like walking up and had a tray of food and he was like, oh God, please don't tell me it's more baked ziti. They had to get like a whole deep freezer, like because so many people were just bringing
Oh my
food and
gosh.
stuff. But now he like can't eat baked ziti because he's like, we had baked ziti for fucking like 2 years because we just had so much. But it's so funny because that's what people do,
I
when someone dies, it's
know.
like you send flowers or you send food.
I know. And we're always like, don't send flowers. Like, what are we going to do with them all?
Right. Like if you want to send me $50, just like send me $50 that I could eat. Don't send me $50 that I have to throw out after 3 days. Or just send me a $50 bill. That's fine too.
Or just text me. Truly, the text is enough. It's
Just
fine.
text.
I'll
Just
see it
text.
later.
But I wanted to ask because I'm happy that you shared that your husband now actually didn't know your dad. He wasn't a part of your journey at that time. But I did hear you before say that you had like a douche lord boyfriend. So
Oh my
what was
God.
that like for you? Because this is traumatic on its own and going through that with a shitty partner. Like, I can't imagine that was fun.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this story, which I've never shared on even my podcast
Tell
before.
me.
But I don't think this person will ever listen to it. And if he does, I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah, fuck you.
Also, backstory as like another reason why I don't talk about this much on my podcast is because this person who went to college with Jared and I played on Jared's football team with him. So
Oh.
But like when everything kind of went down, there was just like an unspoken
Yeah.
split of like people that sort of I stayed close with and people that he stayed close with. So Jared was one of those people for me. And to be fair, Jared and his friends who are in his class. So like I'm a year below Jared in school. So
Okay.
he had like his class of teammates and then my ex was like in my class. So then like his class of teammates kind of like stayed with his friends, but
Fair.
I was so close with Jared and his friends like I stayed close with all of them. And there were many situations where I was like like about to fight people over this guy and like they pulled me out of these situations and then they were like they were just the best. So that's like how Jared and I became so close. But oh my gosh, you will die if you hear this. So like the biggest thing was this person was at the time, I didn't know this, but I should start by saying him and my dad were extremely close. Like at the
Mhm.
time, my dad was living like 5 minutes away from my school. Because also rewind, my parents were going through a divorce like a year before my dad died. So there was like a whole nother layer of
Mm.
bullshit that I was dealing with.
Right.
But I say that to say my dad was living like really close to my school, which was like an hour away from where my mom lived. But anyways, so whenever I would have to go there to like bring him his medicine or like do another million list of errands for him, my ex would come with me. And like obviously I'm in college. This is my first like serious relationship. So I'm thinking like I'm gonna be with this person forever. So that's how ingrained he was like in my family at this point. Oh my God, you're just gonna fucking die when I tell you this. So my dad passed like the night that my dad passed away, he was there in the hospital with me. He drove, it was me, my ex, my roommate at the time, who's still my really good friend, Jess. Hi, I love you.
Love you,
Um,
Jess.
um, my uncle, my dad's like girlfriend at the time, and that was it. My sister lived in Maryland at the time as well. So when she got the call that this was like it, she had to get on a plane, like she missed it. Like I was the only child. I mean, my brother was
Wow.
sleeping in this house. So I was the only one of his kids who was like there for the actual crossing over.
Right.
But my ex was there as well. So very intimate thing that he like experienced with me. So this is all happening in February, right?
Mhm.
So whole time he's being like super supportive. Actually, I had no idea of all the other things that were going on.
Was he
Uh
cheating?
oh yeah, fully had an entire another girlfriend.
No.
But I don't find this out until like two like months later. So February, this is all happening in February. He was driving me to like we had a private viewing of like the body and he drove me to that. He sat outside for it. And after the private viewing, he drove me back to my mom's house and I was like vomiting and just having all the physical
Right.
reactions to that. And like he was there for that. Like to his credit, very supportive. And was also a pallbearer at the funeral.
Oh my God.
Like they were very, very close. And we spent a lot of time there because again, it was 5 minutes away. My dad was sick. He always needed something. He always needed me to drop off something or pick up something. Like my college experience wasn't normal in that way. So whenever I was doing those things or like spending the weekend at my dad's, like he was with me. So in a sense, like he was sure grieving this person as well a little bit in a different way, but was honored like to be asked to be a pallbearer. Mind you, my dad was like 6'5", so large, heavy casket. We needed a lot of pallbearers.
I do really, though, give you credit for ending this relationship and doing what is best for you because I am putting myself in your shoes. And that would be really hard for me knowing that, like, my dad loved this person. He, was one of the pallbearers at my dad's.
Best
Like,
friends.
I don't know if I would have that strength to do that.
Oh no, I didn't. It took many years. But so that happened in February. And then in April was when I found out that there was like a whole nother person. And mind you, my school at the time, our college was not that big. It was like the size of a large high school. I think there was less than 3,000 kids that went there. So the fact that I missed it the whole time, but also like I was playing basketball, like I was traveling, it was in
Right.
season, like I was gone. So obviously this was happening during my away games or something. I don't fucking know. But so I find out it's like this big thing.
How'd you find out?
How did I find out? One of my teammates, so the person, yeah, I don't know. One of my teammates knew somebody who knew somebody. I don't really remember, but what I do recall, like hindsight, is that he was receiving text from like an unsaved number the night at, like of my dad's viewing when I was throwing up, and I was like, who is this? And he was like, oh, it's just like a group project or whatever. But like I'm vomiting from grief. Like
Right, your
I
dad
accept
just died.
this.
You don't give a fuck.
I
what
accept this
project.
answer.
Yeah.
So this all happens in April and it goes down. And like this was happening. Like this other whole other relationship had been going on since like November or something. Like this was a seriously and
I'm going to go to jail for murder.
no, and so the girl, she assumed that we were broken up, which is really dumb because we it was just clear, like clearly we were not. Like we were together everywhere. Like this man was a master manipulator.
He needs therapy.
Oh yeah. Well, I think he has gotten some therapy since. But
Yes.
also so this girl, and so this was also when I was rewinding about Jared and his friends saving me from a fight. Like this was the fight. This is so fucking dramatic and ghetto that I'm telling this story. Okay, so fast forward, like I find this out. I call my mom. I'm like, I need to come home right now. I am beside myself, obviously. Like I cannot. And I live an hour away from the school. So I drove home. I had a car on campus. I drove home. He like showed up at my house, like very dramatic stuff. So this is all sophomore year. So sophomore summer, we break up. I stayed on campus for the summer, working, blah, 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 blah. Junior year, we get back together. It was like a very on and off thing. But so we were on and off literally until the end of senior year. Like I think I finally ended it like April of senior year. But the reason we were on and off was because he was still like seeing other people and fucking other people. So it was just a lot. It was just a lot because, again, to your point, at school, specifically in that setting, he was the best person that I knew that I could talk to about it.
Mm.
And all my friends and my teammates and all these people and Jared and all his friends were like, you need to like get over this. And I'm like, I cannot do any such thing. So it was it was really a lot. And, I think like finally by senior year, my basketball season was over. So like that part of my life that was so deeply ingrained in like my relationship with my dad, that chapter had closed. And I was just like ready to like almost just like forget. Like I said, I moved to DC and just forgot everything. Like I was just like, fuck this. Like I'm gonna have amnesia. And at that point, I was just over his shit. It was April. I like came back from a trip with my friends after spring break and like broke up. And he was like literally so beside himself. And was like, please get out of my car. Like, but there were so many, Brenna, I could do a podcast series about this relationship because there were so many other fucked up crazy things that happened.
I
It
should
was
do like
very
a toxic
emotional.
relationship series.
Yes. People would listen to that. And it would make people feel like better about all the fucked up shit that they went through or tolerated in a relationship. And in my situation, right? Like I was tolerating so much, but I was also like ignoring so much because I was mentally and emotionally somewhere else. Like I have a lot of it I've blacked out. Like there are so many things about college that I have realized I blacked out because someone will be like, you don't remember that? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that. And it's so vivid. Like I was there, I was involved, and I have no memory of it. And then I like link it back and I'm like, oh, that was like, I was, whatever. Like I link it back to like where I was in my grief journey. And like I blacked out, like totally blacked out. And I now recognize the feeling. And like, so it's just weird because again, now this person, obviously we don't talk at all, obviously, but we do follow each other on social media because, you know, we're adults now and I really could give 70,000 less fucks. Um, but yeah, it was a very it's just a weird thing because yes, there are a lot of memories that I have of my dad that I like. Another reason maybe I wouldn't say it to Terrence because like he was in that, the other guy was in that memory. So it's just like, oh God,
Mm,
can't even, do you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I can't even like a perfect example is Terrence, who's not from New England, like one of his first years living here. My uncle taught him how to like eat a lobster, like a full lobster, not like a lobster roll, but like, you know, cracking
Yeah.
it and pulling out the meat. He had never done it before. And my ex, when we were in freshman in college and we went to my dad's house for lobsters one day, didn't know how to do it either. My dad taught him how to crack lobster.
Uh,
And it was like one of his best experiences. Like he still talks about it. And they were like, they had a blast. So like then fast forward to 8 years when my uncle's teaching my husband how to do it, the first memory that comes into my mind is like my dad teaching my ex how to do it. And half part of me is like, oh, I wish my dad was here because he could teach you how to do this. And the other part of me is like, I can't even like say that out loud because I'd have to like go into the backstory and then I'm like bringing up a past relationship, which is just so fucking awkward. So it's just so weird sometimes that that person was such a huge part of that part of my life and we don't speak because yeah, it's like it's just a very weird thing to process. Like I still don't
it's a
really
shame
understand
he's
it.
such a douche lord.
Isn't it a shame?
Yeah.
And I like to, you know, I truly believe people change, and like I truly believe like from what I know and from what I hear, because again, we still have mutual friends. Like him and Jared were in a wedding for their mutual friend just last year together. So from what I know and from what I hear, like he is a lot different now, which is great for him. I'm glad, and that's all well and dandy. However, like that time in my life was made significantly worse
Yeah.
because of this person, like significantly worse. And in
Yeah.
my mind, I thought the person was making it better because he was the
Hmm.
only person who understood what I was going through, but it wasn't. It wasn't getting better. And so it's just weird. It's weird. And like I said, I could do a podcast series about this entire relationship because it gets way crazier than that. Like I cannot even
Oh, girl.
like
We're going to need a part two.
no, we are. Like I mean like one time I tried to break up with him and he literally was so dramatic about it. He like threw himself into a seizure, an actual seizure, and had to go to the hospital. It was like a whole Brenna,
What?
just start the series because I will be season one and I
Dude.
will literally give you the play by play. You don't even know. You don't even
What
know. You
the
don't
fuck,
even know.
Asia? Where'd you find this thing?
At school, in my defense,
This
you
thing, not
know,
even a human.
I
But
know.
that is so bizarre. And I'm like, okay, side note, I have been having like really creative ideas lately that just like come out of my mouth. Maybe
Yes.
I really am going to do this like toxic relationship series. I think one, that would be like really fun to listen to. But two, like, let's all talk about our shitty exes.
Please invite me because I think like I should be the finale. I am so confident in how fucked up it is and how juicy it is. I should be the finale.
Okay, done. Done. I
Imagine.
don't even have a plan, but I have the finale set.
We can text about what the title will be after this. I'll get my creative juices flowing.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay,
Anyways.
more on this later. But my last question for you is I know that you just got married, I think last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was your wedding like without your dad there? Because as a woman, that's something we all think about, our dad walking us down the aisle. And I can only imagine that that was really difficult for you.
Yeah, no, that's so funny. Literally, no one has asked me this question. You're the first.
I'm shocked.
I know. It was certainly not preferred. Like I would have loved to have him there. But you know what? It's so weird how like the universe in general just does shit because we were supposed to have a big ass wedding, like 175 people on Martha's Vineyard, bougie
Wow.
AF, like huge. event. And that did not happen because of COVID. And now, like, leading up to this event before COVID, like, we had a 2-year engagement before we canceled. And so we had been planning for like a long time. And literally the entire planning process, I'm not someone who like normally has anxiety, but like the entire planning process, like I was so anxious. I was just so uncomfortable. And you know what? You know how people are like, oh, I can like picture it or like I can visualize what it's going to look like. Like I could not, at no point did I feel like I I felt like 100% sure about this big wedding, like, and I know it has to do with like my grief and like not having my dad there, also some other things like that I was dealing with my family, but I just was never like, everyone around me was so excited, and I was excited to be married, but like I wasn't excited for everybody looking at me walking down the aisle with my uncle who I love to death, who's also my godfather, but not my dad. And like also everybody would be 1000%, I know they would be coming up to me, like people from my dad's family, oh, saying things to me. Like I was just in my head thinking, like, I'm gonna sob from morning to night and like it's just gonna be a miserable thing. Like I was so anxious about it. So then COVID happened and I was hysterical. Like when we decided, we first moved it to October because we didn't know, obviously.
Right.
And then, um, we got like, we eventually ended up canceling it and doing just like a micro wedding in the backyard at my aunt's house. And let me tell you, I feel like the universe knew that I needed that because the only people who were there were like, it was like a very small, intimate group of people, like 30 people, and they know me like the best. They knew my dad the best. They like knew this was something I was going to be going through, but they like didn't overly overdo it, like asking me about it. Whereas like distant family or like cousins I never see are always like, oh, you remind me so much of your dad and all that fucking shit that you hear. And you're just like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a weird, very weird blessing in disguise because it was the perfect day. Literally, my cousins and my aunts like they made everything with their bare hands. Like they made an arbor. They were like literally picking my bouquet flowers. Like it was all very much made with love. And my aunt, this is like a idea for people having weddings that want to honor dead people, but she put like a keychain on my bouquet with my dad's picture on it.
Sweet.
So that was really sweet, but it was like exactly what I needed because like I said, I did not know how I was going to emotionally, because I get more emotional around like more people. Like around
Mm-hmm.
my close people, I can keep it together, but when I'm around like people I don't know, weirdly, like I'm more apt to like become emotional. So just because I like just go internal and I kind of just like shut down. So like again, I was like shaking in my fucking boots. Like I know I was wearing a brave face and like acting excited, and I was excited, but I just could not picture it. Like I couldn't see it in my mind. I had no vision of it, even though I had all the details and I was planning it meticulously. Like I still couldn't see it. It was really, really weird. And so when COVID happened, it was just like, this sucks because we did lose money, but at the end of the day, like I swear to God, like God knew that I just needed to like have something super small and like super intimate and whatever, because I I don't know what I would have done actually on the big day. But I mean, again, the day was still a challenge. Like
Mm-hmm.
all the planning was a challenge, like the whole thing.
Right.
That's like one of those life experiences, like, or life transitions that like made me think like, oh, like I wonder what he would think about this. And like it's gonna happen again whenever I have kids. It's gonna happen again whenever, my kids are playing basketball, like all these things. So yeah, I don't know. It was emotional, but I feel like if I had the bigger wedding, it would have been way worse.
Yeah.
Weirdly.
Yeah. Everything worked out for you.
Everything worked out exactly how it was supposed to work out. And like again, I'm a strong believer in signs and the fact that these people are always with us. And I've been trying to practice like um asking for signs and like communicating with people. I watched this documentary. I don't know if you saw it, but it's on Netflix. It's called like, oh fuck, I'm not gonna remember, but it's something about near death. It's like a documentary about
Yes,
death.
I know what you're talking about.
Yes. And the
Yes.
first episode is like about near death experiences, and then one of the episodes is about like communicating with, people who you've lost and stuff like that. And one of the things they said in the documentary that just has stuck with me was like, you know, people go to mediums and like all these people to like try to communicate with their loved ones. And like the reality of it is like they're communicating with us all the time. We're just moving way too fast in our lives to like notice or anything like that. And sometimes people are like scared of, seeing a sign or like being spooked out by something when it's like there's nothing to be spooked out about. Number one. Number two, you'd be surprised like how close by they are when you literally ask for signs. Like this is a new thing I'm trying to do more often, is like just speaking aloud to him and or like anyone else that I've lost and say like, can you send me a sign? Like, and being specific about like what that sign would be, like something that only you and that person would know. Or maybe you say specifically, like, if you're here, like, show me this. Like, those things fucking work. And like, it is only validated that truly, like, our souls just are alive forever. So stuff like that has really, it sounds so woo, but it's come a long way for me because, especially in my dreams, like, I will call people or whatever to my dreams and they'll come and I'm just like, okay, this works. Like, I'm talking to them, like they can hear me, they're right here. Or like, and like I said, sometimes they're sending us signs and you don't even know, like you're not looking or you're moving too fast. And like once you just slow down for a second and like take in your surroundings and like just be, I'm like, I've always been a super observant person, but now I'm like on a hunt for like signs from dead people all the time. So like I notice them more, you know what I mean? But it's such a true thing. In the documentary, I've always felt that a little bit. And when I watched the documentary, it just like validated it. And I was like, I fucking knew it. Like I knew it.
Yeah. My Nana just recently passed away in April. And long story short, like I realized that butterflies was like a thing, like it was a sign. So it's so bizarre that we're talking about this because a butterfly has like come up for me like in songs and stuff and just like on TV or whatever. And last week I had said out loud, I was like, if you're really like sending me signs, like I want an actual butterfly, like send me actual butterflies. Asia, I am telling you, today was the seventh day. Literally for the last week, every single day, I have encountered like a real butterfly. And like butterflies are not like, that's not something that you see every day, but like it's so bizarre. Every day that I've walked, I've encountered a real butterfly. And actually, this morning, I thought it was like a giant mosquito. So I was like, ah, and I like ran away. And then I was like, holy fuck, now she's like attacking me. Like, oh my
Oh
God.
yeah. I literally just saw something on Instagram of a girl, a bride, who a butterfly was like landing on her and wouldn't, like she was trying to get it and it would just come back, and she ended up putting it on her bouquet and it like stayed there for literally like all the pictures. And
Oh,
yeah, the post was about like they thought it was like one of her loved ones that had passed away. It's literally so legit. I cannot
oh,
stress enough. Like if you want to communicate with your loved ones, all you have to do is like open your mouth and
yeah.
they will somehow communicate back. And like I understand people that are like, oh, that's like spooky or weird or scary. And like kind of, but also like, do we not just all talk to ourselves anyways? Like I walk around this house talking to myself like I'm a crazy person all the time. Like,
Yeah, same.
so now I'm just like directing it to somebody that I would have been confiding in anyways. It's just like, it sounds crazy, but it's normal
Yes,
and
it is.
valid.
Yes. So, Asia, this was great. Thank you
I
so
can't
much.
believe it's over. Do we have to end it?
I know, girl, you're coming back for the toxic relationship finale.
What is the title of that podcast going to
I
be?
don't know, but I also like as we were talking about it, I feel like it should be like yours will be the only one that's not anonymous, but like I feel like other people should be anonymous because then more people will be likely to like share every detail of their story.
Yeah. There might be crazier ones out there. I just am pretty confident about this one, but
If you're confident, I'm confident. I love this. So guys, Asia will be back. But Asia, in the meantime, where can people find you? Tell everyone.
all the things.
Yeah,
Okay,
all the things.
so our podcast is on Instagram at Done with Adulting Pod. My personal account on Instagram is in our bio, but it's also at Simply Asia Noel. Asia like the country, Noel like the normal way. And yeah, that's where I can probably best be reached. I'm all over the gram, truly. And our podcast is anywhere you listen to Real Fucking Talk. We are also there. And I just had so much fun. I don't want it to be over. We need to we could, oh my gosh, I have so many ideas. Thank you so much for having me because this is like the best. This has been the best.
Yes.
Truly.
All right, guys, we got to go because we're going to talk about all of our ideas after this. So thanks for tuning in. See you fuckers next week.